evening and welcome to another edition of Filmnut. I am your host, Jeff Schubert. Glad you can join us for tonight's show. To catch past episodes of Filmnut, you can go to thestream.tv/Filmnut. And to follow us on Twitter, you can go to @thefilmnut. You know, in the season 5 opener, I mentioned how important it is for filmmakers to keep current in their respective fields. And tonight we welcome in the first cinematographer of the year. My guest tonight is Blake Evans, and he has a vast background as a DP in film and television. His TV credits include The Middle, starring Patricia Heaton and Neil Flynn. This show will be coming back for its 3rd season in September. Other TV credits of his include The District, that starred Craig T. Nelson, and Samantha Who with Christina Applegate. His film credits include Three Ninjas, High Noon, and Mega Mountain, Comic Book Villains, and All I Want, starring Elijah Wood and Mandy Moore. Blake has also worked on some great documentary behind-the-scenes shorts about films I think, a few of you may have heard of, Terminator Salvation and Capturing Avatar. Blake Evans, welcome to Filmnut.
Nice to be here, Jeff.
Great to have you. I'm very excited to talk to you. I had a chance to start watching The Middle this week. I'm embarrassed to say I wasn't familiar with it before, but I'm so glad you're on because the show is hysterical. Very funny. Congratulations on your 3rd season and
Thanks.
Being a part of it since the 1st season.
Well, we're proud of the show.
Yeah, no, it's great. One question I wanted to ask you about with regards, because I know you do have a lot of film credits, but you have some very strong episodic work as well. In film, you always hear that it's a director's medium. In TV, you hear that it's the producer showrunner medium. So as the director, photographer, cinematographer, how does that affect you, and what is your relationship like with the director in TV?
Well, in television, let me go back. In feature work, the director is the head creative force. And so, of course, the cinematographer is working with the director, and everything goes from there. In television, the director is someone who's coming in on a per-episode basis. So, because a show may have done 40 episodes and then this director comes in off the street, it's hard to make that person the head creative person just out of the blue, and then the week after that they're gone.
Right, so, for example, you've worked on it with about 10 different directors for The Middle, and you're more of the constant.
The DP, the director of photography, definitely becomes a constant on a TV set. You know what the look of the show is, you know what the producers are expecting from the look of the show, and TV directors know that. TV directors are usually very good chameleons, and they come in knowing that they're the visitor, they're the guest for the week, and they rely on their cinematographers to make the show look like it's supposed to be looking. And
your show, some situation comedies are shot with 3 or 4 cameras. Yours is shot with 1. Is that correct?
The Middle is a typical, what we call a single camera style comedy, like Scrubs, like Modern Family or Cougar Town or Malcolm in the Middle, or these are all single camera style TV shows where we carry an A and a B camera, but that's not to say we're setting up on a proscenium with an audience. It's very much like films are made or dramatic television is made. It's one scene at a time. It's one angle at a time. Maybe you have a wider and a tighter, or your angles are a little off from each other. But you're making a single camera style comedy like you would, anything you'd see in the theater or these other TV shows that I mentioned.
We had a director on here, Michael Lembeck, who's directed a feature film, but hundreds and hundreds of sitcoms. One of the things he talks about as a director is coming in, and the first thing he does is taking the emotional temperature of the set. Getting a feel for where everyone's at cast-wise, from not only technical but also emotionally where their head's at and so forth. Do you have a process when you enter the set in terms of gauging not only your stars, but then you also have guest stars and you have extras that you're dealing with? Do you have a process when you walk onto the set to start your day?
No, my process is, you have to look at the day's work that you're trying to achieve from the standpoint of the page count, the 6 pages or the 7 pages or the 4 pages that you're responsible for shooting on that day. I mean, in television, I mean, a typical season for us is 120 days, and in dramatic television, it'll be like 160 days. So, we're all professionals. We're all there to get it done. We're all there to get it done well, if not very well. If there's a guest star on the show, or or a guest actor, even maybe they're not stars, but just like there's a new character and they're going to be with you for the week. I mean, we try to make them comfortable, and that's got to be pretty intimidating for them. And you try to tread lightly and give them room and be nice, and
sure,
they're under the pressure of being like the new person, and we.
Absolutely. Now, some technical stuff I want to ask you about your two of your main stars, Patricia Heaton and Neil Flynn. A little bit of a height disparity between the two of them, and I was going over your work, and I was thinking Hulk Hogan and the kids in the Three Ninja movie. But
yeah.
No, we can address that with the middle with those two. Is that challenging to shoot them, or?
Well, we have. There's always, when there's a scene between Patricia and Neil, there's usually a call out, are you seeing her feet? And if we don't see her feet, then we'll put her in her big shoes, so she can wear, and she's always very gracious about putting on these uncomfortable, tall shoes, which, can't be as comfortable as just, her normal flip-flops and stuff. But that helps. One of the things that we discovered early on in season 1 was because of Neil's physical presence, and because he's so tall, and because of sort of the way his character is, you don't want him to be too severe. You want people to like him and empathize with him as the father of this family. So looking up, having him dominate the frame by being so tall and the camera being maybe a little too low is not good. It makes him seem even more severe than maybe, his booming voice and his broad shoulders. He doesn't need to be made to look more severe, So there was a lot of, effort between me and my camera operator, and to always bring the camera up as much as we could and still maintain an eye line, to like Patricia that we felt was appropriate, but really push it up, the height of the camera up, so that it doesn't get too low.
I wanted to ask you a lighting question. When you have to white balance a scene, does it become trickier when the light in the scene is a combination of natural and artificial? Has that come up with the middle, and if so, how do you do it?
Well, I would have to say, what's your definition of artificial? I mean, if you're working let's say you're working in a living room in a real house and there's light from the outside coming in the window, you need to be working with daylight balanced sources, i.e. HMI lights, which are daylight balanced, or daylight balanced Kino flows, and then everything will match. If you start working with tungsten lights, you're going to have to, someone's sitting on a couch and there's, a window with daylight here and there's tungsten here. Well, this is blue and this is orange. Maybe that's okay for you. Maybe it's not. You need to decide if that's okay, great, and if it's not okay, then you need to, do something about it. I mean, you need to pay attention. And one of the meters, I brought a few meters in. This is a color temperature meter, and it measures the blueness, or the orangeness of the light, or the greenness, cool white fluorescence in a shopping mall, and so some of these things are hard. Our eyes are so good; they adapt. Our eyes white balance instantly, and you don't even know it's happening. So everything seems white, everything seems perfect, everything seems beautiful, and it ain't beautiful.
I wear tinted lenses all the time, and everything still seems white to me.
So a color meter, especially in these mercury vapors and these sodium vapors and these cool white fluorescents, if you use a color temperature meter, it can tell you what's going on out there, and then you can adapt accordingly, as opposed to being surprised when you see dailies.
Right.
Or, I mean, nowadays, you know, I mean,
So
if you're
use the
shooting,
appropriate filters and that sort of thing.
yeah, I mean, you might be filtering your lights. I mean, like I used to do commercials for a grocery store chain back in the North Midwest area, and we'd do these commercials at, like, you know, 2 a.m. when the grocery stores are empty, you know,
Right.
so we're not like making all the patrons mad and stuff. And you can't start from scratch. You can't just turn off all the lights in the place and start lighting from scratch. I mean, you got to come in at 8 o'clock at night, and you got to leave at 6 o'clock in the morning, and you got a whole grocery store. So you find out what the predominant color temperature is, and then you match your lights to that, and then you go into an area and you say, okay, you know, kill off some of this, we'll add some of this, but you're not starting from zero. You know, you're starting with a base.
Sounds good. Well, the chat room is filling up with questions for you, so time for me to share you. And the first one we got is from Whimsy. Does it matter to the cinematographer if you are working in TV, film, or documentaries? And any preference?
Does it matter to the cinematographer? Well, I don't like to do documentary work. I discovered that a long time ago. I did several, as an assistant, I did several things for 60 Minutes when we shot in 16 millimeter back in the day with Mike Wallace, and, you know, we traveled to China and Korea and, you know, Central America, and I discovered right away documentary work wasn't for me. I had to have some control to shape events.
Right.
And a documentarian does not shape anything. I mean, that is verboten. I mean, that's
a pure documentarian.
well, yeah. I mean, and that's, you know, I mean, the term is very loosely
used these days,
bandied about.
Yes.
And it's kind of too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I realized early that I wanted to change the world, to make it fit into my box,
Right.
you know, and that documentaries were not the thing for me. I did a lot of feature work, you know, these small $2, $3, $4, $5, $6 million features, which took me all over the world. I did a feature in Peru, up in the Andes, you know, a month at Machu Picchu, which was fantastic. I did a movie in the Philippines, 2 movies in Budapest, a little side trip to Paris, some work in Barcelona. You know, I've been all over the world. I've been to
So film, you get to travel. TV, steady gig.
film, you get to travel more.
Mm-hmm. Now,
TV, you get to sleep in your own bed. And so I was fortunate that I did the feature stuff where I got to travel when I was a little younger and a little more like, you know, I mean, literally, I had, you know, producer, you know, he would call me. He called me on a Monday, and he's like, can you get on a plane Wednesday to come out to Prague? Because this director's just screaming at me, and she's saying, I promised she said, you promised me that I could have Blake. And he's like, I didn't promise you that, you know, and I didn't even, you know, I haven't even, you know, but he's like, I'm in a jam, and she's screaming at me, and she's mad, and she, you know. So when you're a little younger, you know, and maybe haven't started a family yet, you know, that's a great thing to do. Once I wanted to be in my own bed more, I segued into television, and I have not regretted it, because it's very fulfilling, and I like being, you know, around, you know, my wife and children, and in
Absolutely.
my house with my toys, and, you know.
Yeah, and you know, you've worked on some great shows with some great stars.
I'm very fortunate.
Senior Shutter would like to ask, do you think film is dead? Has all the new digital technology put an end to shooting on film? As someone who's shooting with film, I have a feeling I know what your answer is going to be.
Boy, howdy. Senior
Shutter.
Senior Shutter.
Do you have a prepared answer for him?
I do.
This is amazing. This is like an instant message question. We didn't know this was coming in.
Senior Shutter. I think that you have to look at the current state of what's in your local movie theater. I think you have to look and you have to say, you know, let me ask you a question, Jeff.
Please.
Is J.J. Abrams an idiot?
He is not an idiot.
Is Guy Ritchie? Is Quentin Tarantino? Is Steven Spielberg? Is Jon Favreau? Is Martin Scorsese? Is Chris Nolan? Is Darren Aronofsky? Is Martin Campbell? Is Kenneth Branagh? Is Terrence Malick? Are these people fools?
I'd be happy to work for any one of them.
They're all shooting film. Green Lantern was shot on film. Thor was shot on film. Super 8 was shot on film. Inglourious Basterds was shot on film. All these pictures, the new Guy Ritchie Sherlock Holmes, shot on film. Why are these people shooting on film? I mean, now you may say like, well, Martin Scorsese's old school and Steven Spielberg are old school. Guy Ritchie's, you can't say that all these people are just hanging on to the past. There is a reason. You've got Mad Men, you've got Glee, you've got The Middle, you've got True Blood. All these TV shows shoot in 35 millimeter. There's a reason. And I don't think that film is dead, and I'm not going to say that film won't die someday. I'm not going to say it's not going to die in 5 years, but it's certainly not dead right now. And if you're not shooting in 3D, you're shooting on film if you're shooting features. The reason James Cameron shot Avatar the way he did was because it was 3D. He shot Titanic on film. Jon Favreau shot Cowboys versus Aliens on film. Green Lantern, a show that is so chock full of effects. 300, one of the most revolutionary, and I can't confirm this, but I think Watchmen and Sucker Punch 2, shot on film. The reason that Zack Snyder shot 300 on film is because at the time that 300 came out, they couldn't do that kind of high speed work on high def, and they can now. And I know some of the stuff that you'll see in the new Sherlock Holmes movie that Guy Ritchie directed, that Philippe Rousselot shot. Some of the really high speed stuff was done on a Phantom, which is a digital camera, but the bulk of the movie was shot on film. But I know there are when you see the film, you'll know it. Some cannonballs through the forest, splintering trees at like 1,000 frames per second. It looks really cool. Some of that stuff was done on the Phantom, which is a great use of the video technology in that you can shoot it and watch it immediately, as opposed to high-speed film. You have to shoot it, send it to the lab, look at it tomorrow, look at it the next day, and then you'll know whether or not you have it. And,
Well, I tell you, I love that answer. First time in maybe 70 or 80 episodes, I want to say, someone actually brought in notes for an answer. I think it's great. And I think, people always love to pronounce things dead. I don't know why. I think film is safe for a long time. Obviously, you gave outstanding examples. I look at filmmaking, TV, whatever it is, as an artistic expression, and people are always going to want to have their own different, unique tastes. So I think there will always be a percentage of filmmakers, no matter how much digital advances, that will keep film alive for the texture of it, for the difference that it possesses over digital.
Yeah, it's just there's a warm. There's a humanity to film. And from an ecological standpoint, it's a disaster. You're using, it's a silver-based, you're using all these chemicals and all these natural resources. It's much more ecologically sound to shoot digitally.
Right.
I'm sorry to say, but there is a warmth that film, a humanity that film gives. Once upon a time, there was a story. Look at Star Wars. If you've looked at and I can't wait till the Blu-ray, Star Wars. But look at the original, what's available now on DVD, right, of the original movie Star Wars that was shot in 1976. It's unbelievable. It's so beautiful.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
Denando would like to ask, how much of a science is cinematography and how much is art?
How much is a science? How much is an art? Well, you have to know. You, as a cinematographer, you really should be one of the smartest people in the room. There should not be things that you're guessing about.
Right.
That's frowned upon.
Yeah, that's frowned upon, huh?
So, I mean, you need to know your craft. I mean, you need to know lenses and the coatings that are on those lenses. You need to know filters. You need to know film emulsions. You need to know chips. You need to know the electronic aspects of things. You still need to know what's going to happen if you push or pull the film in the lab. I mean, last season we did stuff where we pushed a stop, on our film. I mean, you don't hear people talking about like pushing much anymore. But I mean, you need to.
And pushing a stop for the audience is?
Well, it's having the film go through the developer slower. I don't know what the normal time is, but let's say like the normal time is like 2 minutes in the developer. When you push, you say like send it through and let it sit there for 4 minutes. So it's going to develop more. It's going to pull up. There's going to be more exposure given to the negative because you're shooting it thin. So I mean, and not only the technical side of being a cinematographer, but then knowing how to tell stories, knowing how it's going to cut together. I mean, it's very important to think like an editor when you're shooting because you're cutting out the pieces that the poor editor is going to be saddled with, trying to make these cuts. And optimally the cuts become seamless. I mean, optimally, someone watches a 2-minute clip and you say, did you notice the editing? And they're like, no, because the pieces are cut so that they're very smoothly beveling together. And that's a huge part of what the cameraman is responsible for doing, is creating these smooth segues. And then there's the people management aspect of you're sort of you're a prime driver on a large crew, camera, grip, electric, all these people function through you, and then art department functions through you, and wardrobe, and there's continuity. There's a lot of departments that channel through the director of photography, and you have to have the people skills to balance this all out and keep the machine moving forward.
About, is it an art or is it a science? I think, and
the answer is yes.
Right, it is both. I mean, you have to know your skill level like the back of your hand so you can forget it, and then you can express yourself artistically. You know what? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be able to play the scales before you can play songs. I mean, you need to know the craft so you can forget the craft. And I mean, everyone's all hung up on eye lines and crossing the line and this and that. And I mean, these things are just part of the process of making. I mean, you have to be. I mean, you have a round dinner table with 5 people there. It's like, okay, where's your line?
Right.
I mean,
let's see the camera go round and round. One question, speaking of the director and the editor, are those 2 people that are in a position to make you look good or bad, depending on if they cover the scene correctly? That would be the director. If the editor, what takes he chooses? Are you kind of?
Well, I mean, I think the editor and the director and the composer, and I mean, they can all make each of us look good or bad.
That's right.
I mean, you take Star Wars and you have someone else other than John Williams compose it and it becomes Flash Gordon.
Right.
I mean, real quick. So, I mean, the photography of Star Wars looks better because of John Williams' score.
Absolutely. Let's see, Holden wants to know, does Blake think 3D is here to stay or just a fad?
I don't think that 3D helps anyone tell a story. I think 3D is a selling tool that gets people into the theater. I don't know that like Pirates of the Caribbean #4 was better because it was in 3D. I don't know that it was more. I mean, there are some people that are like, the film is more engrossing because it's on this Z-axis instead of just the X and the Y. If it's an engrossing script, I'm pretty engrossed.
Right.
I mean, if I'm in the movie theater and you've got some good characters and a good script, I'm with you. I mean, pretty much 100%. So I don't know that I need the Z-axis to make me be with you more.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I think it's going to be something that the big films, I don't know, I mean, it's like, Cowboys versus Aliens is not in 3D. Rango was not in 3D. So it doesn't have to be in,
No.
I don't think Thor was
I don't think so.
in
I'm not sure.
3D.
But we'll have them put it on the board for me to let me know one way or the other.
So,
We can get
I mean,
confirmation on that.
I don't think it's, I don't think,
Thor was in 3D, but it didn't need to be. Okay, that's what that's what I'm getting from my executive producer.
yeah, I think 3D is here to stay because, I mean, you've built an infrastructure, but I don't know that it's, that every film is going to have to be in 3D.
Okay, a couple of scenes from movies of yours that I want to ask you about in terms of how you shot them. In Comic Book Villains, you had a scene where the comic book store, and by the way, Comic Book Villains, if you're a comic book fan, I think you'll enjoy it if you haven't seen it. Check it out on Netflix, it's on Instant Play. There was a scene where the comic book store is on, spoiler alert, I guess, on fire, and just curious how you shoot fire and the particulars of shooting that scene.
Well, the particulars of fire. Fire can be bright. Mm-hmm. Fire looks better when it's not blown out. Like, orange fire, I think, looks better than white fire, and that's all just a function of exposure. So, if you want orange fire, which I prefer orange fire. Now, this is on interiors and like at night, you have to build up your lighting to a medium level. You can't be shooting wide open on your lenses because the fire just turns white. And I don't think it's so. But in Comic Book Villains, there is a mixture of interiors and exterior of the. Now, we couldn't burn down the real comic book store that we were shooting in, so we built an exterior and put rubber cement around it and gas and lit it on fire and dealt with the exterior like that, and the inside part we would light small little fires that we could control with propane flame bars, brought up to certain levels, and these effects guys use like model airplane glue, which is like really flammable, and then like put it on stuff and light it and like, how's that, So, fire is about, and movies, composing, it's about building foreground, middle ground, background, and like, a little fire here and a little fire there. And at one point in time.
Did you have a lot of takes for it, or?
Well, I mean, there's resetting that has to be done. Now, I had this idea, which I swear would have worked, that there was a scene after the place is burned down. And it's like the next morning. I'm not even sure if it's in the movie, but I wanted to do it with small people, with dwarves or midgets, or small people, and like have like fire, make them look like firemen, and build like because they were like, we can't build the comic book store burned down, it's too big, and I was like, just build it 1/3 scale and have these little firemen walking through it. With like their fire coats. It'll be perfect. We'll just scale it down. And then it'll only have to be, the whole store will only have to be like 12 feet wide, by 12, 13 feet that way. And they were like, you're crazy. And so it never happened. But now, I swear it would have worked.
I don't know if you know the answer to this one, but I swear in New York City, I knew 2 comic book store owners just like the ones in the movie. And I was so curious if they actually based it on them.
Well, the person who wrote Comic Book Villains, wrote and directed Comic Book Villains, is a comic book writer, and he has, he was at Comic-Con before it was ever Comic-Con, and he knew what he was writing about. He knew how passionate, let's say, these people can become.
Let's see, Cram Tree would like to ask, I apologize if I butchered that screen name for you, I'm doing the best I can. Do you prefer being the camera operator when working as a DP?
Well, I love operating. And in my day, I was a very good operator.
Do you have a shoulder problem now, or?
No. But what I found is that I can make the set move faster if I'm not saddled with operating in addition to being the director of photography. I mean, there's a personalness to it that I enjoy, that the lighting and the composition, second by second, is of my design. But at a certain point, you need to go look at the next set. You need to walk, 2 stages over and see, take a peek in on the such and so that's being built and lit, and give instructions to the riggers and television. I mean, at any given time, it's like, we shoot like the middle as an example. We shoot in 5 days. Hopefully 5 12-hour days. It would be great if it was 60 hours and we went home. Sometimes it's 61, 62, 63, 64. But in that period of time, I'm not just shooting that episode. I'm also reading the next script for the next episode. I'm making notes on that, what extra equipment might be needed, and I'm getting DVDs from an episode 4 weeks ago that's come from the lab. Hey, we've just done a color timing pass on this. Give us your notes on this. So I mean, there's many things going on other than just this shot here and now. And so if you don't have good people and supervise them, but give them their space to also fulfill themselves creatively and do good work, it's just you get overburdened. You start doing a couple of things well, and other things start falling through the cracks, and you start showing up to sets that are not set up the way they need to be, and things start to go south.
Another scene of yours I wanted to ask you about from All I Want is there was a scene at the horse racing track. 1 second you're seeing the horses go by, and then the next you're cutting to seeing the stars or the characters watching the horses. So how do you shoot that in a way to where it's believable that they're watching the horses go by at the appropriate speed and so forth?
Yeah, well, not many of those shots tied in the actors to the horses. I mean, we found out very quickly, you can have an we're used to having an actor do it and do it again and do it again and do it again. You can't have horses running races like that. I mean, they get tired out. So we had the shots of the horses that we did and the horse race that we, had them do. And then at that point, we turned and started working with the actors, Elijah Wood and Franco Potente. And in that instance, in that horse race instance, it's a matter of geography with the venue. I mean, they're at the rail or they're at their seats. So if they're looking to their left, just physically, towards their left shoulder, that's where the horses are coming around the track. When their eye line becomes more squared up with their body, because we said they're in the middle, they're by the finish line, and when their eyes sweep past, here's the finish line. So, when their eyes come to this point, that's when it's like, oh, they lost, or oh, they won. I mean, you need to create that. People understand that way down there is going to be coming around the last turn, and over here is going to be the finish line, if that's what you establish. So if you put the camera more over here, then the finish line is going to be a little more profile. I mean, you have to respect the geography of your environment more than you have to say well, the horses looked left and they have to look right, and none of that stuff really applies. If you're going to base it, things have to make sense in addition to just eye line crosses and things. I mean, that's where the artistry comes in. That's where the experience comes in. Because the directors are like, should they be looking left? And the script supervisor's yelling from the monitors, no, and it's like, hold on, guys. And so you kind of have to talk people down sometimes.
That's funny. Bubble Boy Chet. Question, have you noticed a growing trend to shooting film very flat and then adding dynamic color in digital post instead of in camera?
Not really. I mean, obviously, the tools in post have become very powerful. CGI and color timing with computers as opposed to just, I mean, when I was doing, the films that I did, it was that we would go in the lab and there was a red, green, and blue, and you varied the red, green, and blue, and it made it brighter and greener and bluer. And now you do a lot of these things, it's digital timing, you do them on computers. So you have a lot more control in post than you used to, but no one's out there trying to shoot flat and we'll make it contrasty later. I mean,
right. Well,
there's no fun in that. Right. I mean, we all fancy ourselves geniuses, So, having said that, there are, like a friend of mine was an operator, down the road on Iron Man 2, and he's up on this high shot looking down, and he's like, well, there's 2 camera crews in this shot that you have me lining up on, and the DP was like, well, if they like the shot, they'll just paint them out,
Right.
They'll just digitally remove them, and that's the only way to get those shots and this shot at the same time, is to have those guys, and time is money to such an extent on those big pictures that it's a good idea. I mean, it's cost effective to say, hey, we can do all these angles at the same time, and this camera crew, if you love this angle for that piece, just digitally remove them. So there are, but and even on shows like The Middle that aren't Iron Man 2, there are times when we'll get on a set and I'll see something from a light standpoint, a shading standpoint, and it'll be like, gosh, I got to get that wall down, and it's like, I'm gonna have to bring in lifts. I'm gonna have to have guys go up to the perms. It's gonna be ropes. It's gonna be 10 minutes. It's gonna be, and then I'm like, well, no one's moving through that zone, and the camera is not doing any big dynamic moves, so it would be very simple in post just to blend that off, just to bring that down. They're not gonna have to cut around people and different things like that. So sometimes it's like, yeah, okay, we're ready, it's good. And then I'll make sure to give that note to the color timer 4 weeks down the road, you gotta help me on that wall.
Sounds good. We've got a couple questions before we are ready to get you out of here. Fawa, we seem to have a recurring theme on Filmnut now. Something pertaining to Jeff not having hair. Are bald guys hard to light? How do you deal with all that glare?
Wow. Wow. All that glare. A polarizer can do some really cool, crazy things outside to a head. I mean, the sheen becomes can become really interesting in a rolled off way. But I mean, you can't backlight people the same way that don't have hair or have very little hair. I mean, backlight has to be tailored to the person. Dark hair, light hair, no hair. So I mean, lighting is not just A, B, C, D. It's like 3-point. Here's the key. Here's the fill. There's the back. We're good to go. I mean, it's more complex than that. And I mean, one of the first things you think about is the person's hair. Now on the middle, we a lot of times shy away from backlights because we don't want it to look like a Hollywood set. We don't want these people to look glamorous. These people are in the Midwest in a small house with some crazy colors and some shag carpet, and they're just trying to get by like a lot of Americans are, and we don't want them to be like the Hollywood version of the people from Indiana.
Right.
We want them to be like the people from Indiana.
Right.
So, my gaffer and I always kind of check each other on the backlights, and we like to sprinkle them in for separation, but we don't want anybody to look too glamorous. It's not Falcon Crest here.
Right.
It's the middle.
Now, what is your favorite set speak term?
Well, Abby Singer is up is a good one because that means it's the next to last shot, or that's a wrap. We'll see you tomorrow at
6 o'clock.
7 a.m.
7 a.m.
You know, that's a wrap. You know, I mean, it ties in with some people say like, well, what advice can you give? You know, a young person that wants to get into the film business. And my advice always is get comfortable shoes, because you're going to be standing on your feet a lot. And that ties in with that's a wrap, because you can finally like start thinking about getting off your feet, you know, and getting in your car and getting home and like, you know, collapsing on the couch.
Comfortable shoes and Dr. Scholl's.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure talking to you tonight. And congratulations on season 3, which I believe begins September 21st or 22nd.
Sounds good.
Would be the first one. And for anyone who might not be familiar with the show, you can go to abc.com and check out the middle. They got all kinds of clips and highlights you can catch to catch yourself up. And of course, the first season is available on Netflix. And Blake didn't pay me to say any of that, so it's all on my own.
I'll give you a little something later.
So let's see, that is going to do it for this edition of Filmnut. Once again, I do want to thank Blake Evans, all of you guys for tuning in, and the great questions in the chat room. Sorry if we didn't get to all of them, and we will see you next time on Filmnut.